Good morning. I thought today we might talk about the confusing story of the creation and how it shaped our world of winners and losers, bankers and borrowers, Babylonians and their spiritual descendants versus the world. If possible, I would like to have the discussion without generating religious or racial hatred, but you should probably realize that history has that sort of thing bubbling up every time we view our culture or civilization as under threat. And the year 2022 is going to be one of those times. Before I get hate mail, you might wish to know that I view religion as Carl Sagan might have viewed science, as a way to explain the cosmos to people. The advantage religion has over science is that it can discuss things that happened 25,000 years ago as an interesting children's tale bereft of footnotes and academic argument. And its huge disadvantage is that it's tainted again and again by axe grinding, selfish empire builders constantly updating the narrative. 20,000 changes to the Bible this year. Comes out in May if you're still here and interested. My goal is not to have you question your upbringing, just maybe get you to put down your gun. It's too late in the game to fix how we raise our children. We've more immediate problems to attend to. But we've arrived at a terrible, a vital existential moment in which we are seeing billions of people act like Walt Disney's Lie of the Lemmings was somehow the truth. In 1958, Walt Disney produced White Wilderness, supposedly a wildlife documentary with a segment on the great lemming migration, detailing an absurd instinct to commit suicide by jumping into the sea. What actually happened was a film crew brought to you by the same guys that killed Bambi herded a bunch of little rodents off the cliff. Today we have a similar situation in which a self-licking ice cream cone called the World Health Organization, with tentacles in government, big pharma, and your doctor's office, has administered more doses of the C word than the world has people. And a dozen years too late, we learned that the very same people spent from 2009 to 2019 inventing the problem. By now, you probably know that I view Christianity and Islam as derivative from Judaism, and Judaism derived from Babylonian and Egyptian myth, which, by the way, if you're interested, see Berosus and Genesis, Manetho and Exodus by Russell Gmirkin. Those mythologies probably derived from even older imagery nobody understood, like the sun god being killed, turning into the story of Adam's rib and how women are bad. And the images contrived by extraterrestrials and your distant ancestors to tell you this planet's predicament in a clockwork universe. You can find dragon's eye or raven serpent or raven scorpion stones going back tens of thousands of years. Our tales of the blue star and red star and the four times a precession rebirth of the sun go way back in our programming. And somehow it all got turned around from being a problem of physics to being somebody's plan for domination. Christians did not invent it. Jews did not either. It's Brahma and Shiva. It's Inanna and Dumuzi. It's Anzu and Enki. It's Marduk versus Tiamat. It's in the mythologies of the Americas. It's Utu and Hercules and Adad and Dagan. And you can find it in the Sumerian texts online. And if we could ever get back to first principles, we'd foresee what's truly about to happen. For years, the Illuminati has been showing off that they've got a huge secret without telling us what they were about or who they're working for. Well, I can't tell you how many ancient stones I've seen where there are two vying entities at the next changing of the guard. Generally, death is on one side represented by a skull or many skulls, and on the other side, there can be a reptilian or a phoenix or some other god of life, or it can be the sun on one side and visitor stars on the other, or sometimes one of them representing the sun or Jupiter is taking a terrible headshot, as in Zechariah 11. For me, the eyes of Aquarius were seen as Saturn and Jupiter, as placeholders, remembering the blue star and red star. A son who kills, wounds, or puts dad to sleep to get his new position, or a son slain to keep the old guy in charge. And the proceedings are scheduled roughly for between March 1st and April 30th, if the old stones tell the story, which leaves us about 2 months for disclosure and announcing escape plans and crowd control, accompanied by panic buying and riots. I don't know how this thing could possibly turn out well, especially if anyone owning missiles gets trigger happy during the first global power outage. And yes, I understand I have a terrible doomer way of looking at things, but I'm pretty sure the 2 dozen priests working for NASA's Safe Humanity project will definitely earn their pay trying to brainwash us into our next galactic step. Back in the early days of recombinant DNA, we still understood the idea of an abomination. Today, we think nothing of combining human and animal DNA and RNA in our commercial races to improve the species, make cheap food, and curb disease. And the same class of doctors doing this humanitarian research spent 11 years jazzing up bird flu, swine flu, and bat flu, then played shocked when weaponized hybrids escaped China. Novelist Dean Koontz had told us with Eyes of Darkness how it would go back in 1981. So let me put it this way. Have you ever noticed the shamelessness of Hollywood starlets popping out no matter how serious the occasion? Well, lab leaks from a biosafety level 4 germ tank is like the proverbial nip slip. It can happen accidentally, except when it doesn't. And all there is to say is, oops. Far as I know, Fauci is still the top paid US government official. How in the world is that okay? The next few years, with its high radiation environment, read Isaiah 22, we're always expected to bring us chimeras, new cross species hybrids that may or may not have what it takes to survive. So I would advise caution before you accept any more chips, computer interfaces, interspecies organ replacements, or RNA booster shots. We are rushing headlong into a time of grave danger for humanity, and the ones promising to do no harm haven't a clue about the morality of what they've already done. I know there are people out there who detest my negativity. Catfish, I apologize. I promise this is not fear porn. Around the world, in this case, Bahrain, home of Zeusudra, Greece, home of Tyche, Rome, home of Fortuna, and Mexico, a longtime home of ET, things got so incredibly bad during the last creation, people just wanted to stay numb. It's true, there was serious drinking before this last plague. I'm not sure exactly what was in the pot or the pipes, but I have some ideas. On the left, you can see sort of a hierarchy of the gods. Number one is teaching his grandson, the new avatar. We can call them Enki and his grandson Nebo. Marduk can play dragon on the left or phoenix on the right, and the other one can be Inanna, Ninlil, or Ninkarsag, acting as nursemaid to the creation, but sacrifice her at the end. On the right, let's call them Isis, the one handing a new creation to Horus the child. The Dark Lord at the bottom, you can call him Ra, Osiris, Seth, or Anubis, seems to be a god of both north and south, with those directions stretched across the horizon. Symbols for raven and serpent are at his head and feet, and if I'm not mistaken, there seems to be a rite of sodomy in passing along the boy's resurrection or subsequent wisdom. I'm not an advocate, just telling you what I see. Remember the Horus Seth myths. They could symbolize the day Sirius lights up the world from the deep south after we just had the light of Baal in the north. At the very top, can you see the UFO, Black Sun, and Aries in the east when he should have been in the west? The world's about to get spun around, right to left and top to bottom. Hope some of you are ready. Here you can see that Yahwism originated from this time of creation in which Orion and Aries overtook Aquarius. The kings usurped their goddess queens. It happened again in the time of the Exodus. Didn't happen to my mom's tribe until the 1800s when they had to compete with gun-toting foreigners. It's been said that the god who destroyed Mars, Venus, and Middle Earth, the planet exploded into the asteroid belt, brought his empire-building kids to Earth. The Israelites had a tough time in that transition to patriarchy. See how they fought with the Yahwist prophets in Jeremiah 44. To Yahwists, the goddess was the devil. To her people, the god was. To his people, the enemy was all Gentiles, including the northern tribes who had lost the bubble when they were carried away by Assyria. To her people, the enemy was the godmen and their oppressed Yaslings. Who is to be on top in the future? My prediction would be some super smart entity who doesn't give a rat's ass who you are, what rights you think you have, or what glorious history your ancestors could recite. The question is whether you know how to get along with the new administration. Either way, two-thirds of us are slated to die, and a third are supposed to go through trial and re-education. The Ohuelan alien holding a mask, I believe, represents the god. It's also a double entendre for a visitor between us and visitor and Jupiter. The carved shell in the center is Sumerian. Obviously, pyramids were not invented in Egypt. I imagine the four sets of waves on the piece represents fire or flood, perhaps both. The Bactrian piece on the right represents the day the flood god has a red star, supposedly aligned with Jupiter, Venus, a body in its own system, and us. The little god of wisdom is praying for us. Remember, we had an Ohuelan stone showing us it will be in Aries. The thing about the Bible is that it isn't in any way straightforward. There's the idea of the firstborn children Yahweh respects by exception rather than as a rule. There's his being on again, off again with all 12 or 13 tribes. Some people count the first colony of 600. There's Jerusalem about to be wiped out, and there's Jerusalem about to be put back together. There are centuries or even millennia of diaspora. Yahweh has a wife in Hosea, and he seemingly hates her guts, but he thinks they might get back together. I mean, the idea of the original Yahweh or Eloha representing their eternal unity gets extremely well buried by the end. By the end of it, my suspicion is that we have an elaborate apology for the Anunnaki that doesn't tell me much about the big secrets of life, and I can't blame the rabbis. Sumerian mythology is every bit as confusing. Anyway, wherever you go around the world, pictured here by the Irish of Boa Island, the Taino of Dominican Republic, the Bactrians of Afghanistan, and the Ohuelans of Mexico, you have the idea of a Jupiter-Saturn event in the new house of the zodiac. On the Bactrian piece, notice he has a heart of heaven in his hand, and she's carrying one of those purses for gathering pituitaries, like Inanna sending out her fishers and fowlers for souls. I guess my question would be to what extent are the two or three principles working together or in competition? Testament of Amram, for example, has the Dark Lord competing with the God of Light as two dragons, probably the two from additions to the Book of Esther. I expect a lot more stories hinting at the truth as things get closer. Now, when they'll tell you what is where and what it means, that may all come after the fact. Why would they want to panic us early? Aleister Crowley has a lot of material on the Lord of the Dead that he included in his Alvel Legis. How much of that is for real, I can't tell you. My concern is that whatever else is going on, it could come pretty soon. I'm really curious to find out which object was the one worshipped by each of the religions. because I'm convinced that everyone has a piece of the puzzle instead of understanding, where their deities really came from. Isaiah 43 says to fear neither flood nor flare. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. The ancient the ancients were ingenious at leaving us hints. For example, the Indian knife. You would expect the dark one to come before the red one, and the pointy end signifying the eagle or raven before the serpent or dragon. Here you have Heka serving up Junior on a platter. So that's Jupiter being handed to Saturn for a meal, or maybe Dionysus. And since he is holding a staff, I'm thinking that would make him Yahweh Senior, Orion. But I've never seen anything from the Bible suggesting that's the case. Isn't it interesting? Heka is sort of in the place of Eve, handing up fruit from the tree of life to her husband. We have hints that the next Saturn moon could bring the great light from Sirius. The Dilmun seal on the left shows Adam and Eve in a boat of the sun with the eagle about to zip across the horizon. That must be a very quick reversal because the dragon who has been playing God of the North has been thrown down to the far south. And the little seal top center is pretty similar, also from Bahrain. I believe the little one on the bottom left was Sasanian or Bactrian. But do you see Saturn holding a staff next to the moon between him and Jupiter? That would be March 1st, day of the Word of God. In the Sumerian literature, you would want to look for the word of An or the word of Enlil. For example, in the Lament for Sumer, it reads, "The word of An and Enlil knows no overturning." In the Yad He Vav He, the word is pronounced for the second time on the day of the third letter, which apparently was written the same way in Phoenicia as in ancient Mesopotamia. It was considered the nail around which the universe spins. A day of the cross you can find marked in the Americas. The large crescent is from Petra, where Muhammad grew up. I'm not sure where that Saturn moon seal at the top was made. I would imagine Persia or Afghanistan. The little seal bottom center is from the Indus Empire. The lesson, I think, is that if indeed the great light shows up on the day of the moon crossing Aquarius, you can understand how Nana, the moon god, was considered father of the gods to Sumeria. The two big images are flip sides of the same Ohuelan stamp. The thing to know about ancient stones is that they are sometimes backward. So instead of seeing things as they will appear in the heavens, they can be a reverse because they could be used to press a block of clay with the real image. And this is one of those cases. The one on the left shows the season of our discontent from the Saturn moon of February 28th to the partial eclipse of April 30th. Note the little four-pointed star on the bottom left. That shows they expected the fourth ram at the time of the Saturn moon, which agrees with the little ring on the right. Notice the phoenix born on the first eye event at the cusp of Aquarius Capricorn. The eye of God, it's on your dollar bill, Madonna's jacket from Desperately Seeking Susan. The thing to notice is that line up the middle, which I take to be the staff of Orion and the great light of Sirius. What I would encourage everyone to do is to study the scriptures and myths and talk to your God about what's going on. It's easy to go with what you've always been taught, but that doesn't always hold true, does it? It would be great to think the Elohim got along, but we know that's not the case. The second there was more than one God in the room. And now we find ourselves in a situation where the ancients thought would involve lots of moving parts. Please steel yourself so you can be a source of sanity when the world comes unglued. Folks will be going nuts on the highways and looting and rioting, and some of them shell-shocked. Some of us will be looking forward to the gravitational anomaly, the great wave, or the great light, and lots of folks might hate you for that. So don't be too loud about it or enthusiastic. Hate is a terrible thing. As always, God can postpone anything he wants. I'm just telling you what your ancestors would tell you has happened before. Shem will bless you and keep you. Take care.